Hello, everyone. Welcome back to StatTech Research's seminar series on measuring progress and well-being. I am Kelsey O'Connor, one of the organizers. Today, we are pleased to welcome Professor Ana Pérez Luño, who will discuss entrepreneurs' well-being and long working hours. This is our last seminar for the fall season, but we'll be back next spring with a number of exciting speakers. And it will speak for approximately 40 minutes and then address questions at the end. At that time, please raise your virtual hands or post your questions in the chat. During the presentation, please keep your microphones muted. And a last reminder, we are recording the event. You'll be able to find this and past recordings on our website and YouTube channel. Now to introduce Professor Ana Pérez Luño, and is a full professor of management at Pablo de Olavide University in Spain, and an associate professor in international business and entrepreneurship at the Trinity Business School, Trinity College, Dublin. And it has held a range of both academic and private consulting positions. She has published numerous high-impact academic papers, won several awards and scholarships, and secured over €1 million in research funding. Her research interests center on creativity, innovation, and company success, with a recent emphasis on psychological variables, including ADHD, stress, well-being, and psychological capital. She has degrees in business, marketing, and psychology. And as you can imagine, is a perfect overlap for our general group on well-being and entrepreneurship within StatTech Research. So without further ado, Ana, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for your introduction, and thank you very much for inviting me to participate in this series of seminars. It is my pleasure to be here this afternoon with you. And I think that we can all learn from each other. So since you have a group on entrepreneurial well-being, maybe I just look forward for the discussion at the end to share our ideas. So yes, please don't fall asleep. It will be interesting, both for you and I. And since you are working with well-being and you are working with some of my co-authors, maybe you've seen this picture before. And I like to use it in most of my presentations when I'm defining well-being, because even when it is a bit controversial, analyzing ill-being and well-being as a continuum, since we all know that these different constructs are independent and are measured in different ways, I think that it summarizes very well the idea of what the World Health Organization mean when talk about health. So they say that health is not just the absence of disease or mental health problem, but a state of well-being in which every individual realizes his or her own potential, can cope with the normal stress of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to her or his community. Having said that, I think that the four constructs that I present on the top of the figure are included in that definition. So, of course, mental disorder can arrive or not from a lot of distress, but the truth is that chronic stress could lead to mental problems in a good if there is a good amount. On the other side of the picture, we have hedonic or being happy construct. Even when the literature have very clearly separate the difference between hedonic and eudaimonic well-being, it is true that in order to feel like optimal functioning, which is eudaimonic well-being, you need some amount of happiness or hedonic well-being. So since I was told that the audience here would be coming from different backgrounds, I have taken the time to defining all of these constructs. So how do we get happiness or contentment? The literature used two different constructs and measures to define hedonic well-being. They talk about positive and negative emotions. That means the frequency and intensity of positive emotions like joy, gratitude, and the absence or reduction of negative emotions like sadness and anxiety are central to hedonic well-being. And also, and that's why since in life satisfaction, they talk about including achievements and personal success. This is why I think that in a way there is an important connection between hedonic and eurodynamic well-being. Here, I summarize some of the aspects that could impact to happiness. And the reason why I talk about them is because I will talk in more detail about some of them in my paper. So of course, it's important the socioeconomic factors, the living conditions, how will you feel in your society. It is really important for the hedonic well-being. On the other hand, social relations are very important, and I don't treat that in the paper that I'm going to discuss today, but we do talk about social relations in our big project. Also, personality traits. It is important to remind that optimists and extrovert people have more positive emotions and feel more satisfied than people with another personality traits. And finally, the cultural context. And that is another issue where we are now focusing our research, how the culture and how the atmosphere in which the entrepreneurs behave impact how they feel. So this was about the hedonic well-being. Here I have used the dimensions that the more frequently used scales of optimal functioning or eudaimonic well-being. So it is important to have a purpose in life, a sense of direction, having meaningful goals, etc. Also, it is important to feel personal growth. So the continual development of one's potential, self-improvement, and ability to face the challenge makes people feeling much better. It is important to have self-acceptance, a positive evaluation of oneself, including awareness and acceptance on strengths and weaknesses. It is also to feel autonomous, the ability to act independently, make self-determined choice, and resist social pressure. It is important to have environmental mastery. That means the capacity to manage life circumstances and creative environment that suits one's needs and values. Positive, and finally, positive relations. As we can see, while I have said from the beginning that hedonic and eudaimonic well-being are different constructs, they have a couple of things that are related and that will impact both of them. I will not get into all of these factors that could lead to stress, but I wanted to mention them because in a way, the paper I'm going to discuss today regarding long working hours could be seen as one of stressors, like a work-related stressors. I would like to discuss that at the end of this presentation. Okay, so the paper that I'm presenting today is part of a big research project that was led by Ute Stefan and that started to work during the COVID pandemic. It was called Supporting Entrepreneurship During COVID Pandemic, and it was a global study of entrepreneurship, resilience, and well-being. In this research, we had people from many countries around the world. At least 26 countries participated in the project, and we are writing some paper together with data from all of the countries. But in the case of today's presentation, I will only focus on the data collected in Spain. So as examples of the papers that have gone through from that project, we have some that have been published, and then we have another that are on the process related to culture, as that one on democracy, related to creativity and another aspects that we think are very close related to entrepreneurs' well-being. Okay, this paper has been written with my co-author, Ana Maria Bojica. She wanted to join us today, but she has another commitment. But I wanted to mention that she has participated in the development of the article. Good. So why shall we focus on long working hours and well-being? It is something important to research. When we were analyzing this paper, we found a study developed by Keynes many years ago, and in his research, he mentioned that the productivity and gross per capita in a country would increase very highly by the year 2020, but the number of working hours a week will decrease dramatically. In these graphs, we can see how he expected the value of the nations to increase a lot, while he expected the number of working hours will drop up to 13, 14 hours a week by now. While his expectations were correct about the value created by nations, see the graph below, the reality regarding working hours has not been met. So we have been discussing in this paper, or when we were discussing the value of the paper, we thought a lot about this. So would we all happier working less? Do we think that working less hours would make them happier? So that was something that we tried to respond with this paper. We have thought that in a way, long working hours is an stressor. But if we think on the contextual reality of an entrepreneur, unless that they have a very special business, normally working more means having more business, which could make them happy. So this was one of the ideas that we wanted to discuss in this paper. The next idea, and I think that this is something that is special for entrepreneurs. So there is an increase in attention to entrepreneurs' well-being in the last, let's say, 30 years. Why have entrepreneurial researchers focused on well-being? First, because well-being is very important for themselves. So it is true that the fulfillment and happiness is an important criteria to judge their success. In some other literature mentioned that entrepreneurs choose entrepreneurship because they think that they are going to be happier. And in this happier, it is important to go back to what we have discussed about hedonic and hedonic well-being. So some literature says that sometimes entrepreneurs are able to get more hedonic well-being, more personal growth, autonomy, self-acceptance, but sometimes they are not that happy talking about hedonic well-being, talking about life satisfaction. On the other hand, it is important to analyze entrepreneurs' well-being because it has been proved that entrepreneurs' well-being supports business performance, productivity, persistence, and creativity. So those entrepreneurs that feel better, that feel happier, they are able to create more value for the companies. So what do we know about this? Why? everything that I've said before is true, we have also found that not all entrepreneurs equally derive well-being on defining entrepreneurs as happier than other group of people. We have thought that maybe some conjunctural and structural factors could nuance this relationship. On the conjunctural factors, we will focus on the number of working hours, and on the structural factors, we will focus on the gender and the socioeconomic status of the entrepreneurs. But there could be many other factors that could impact this well-being of entrepreneurs. Regarding the structural factors, we know that most of the literature have treated gender with the perspective of disadvantages, saying that women face higher demands and constraints than men. While I'm saying this here, we have also studied another more recent line of research, which is starting to understand that sometimes being a woman could have been an advantage for entrepreneurs. Regarding structural difference in terms of socioeconomic status, the literature in social psychology, sociology, and health mention that higher well-being is got for individuals with higher socioeconomic status. But again, this is not something straightforward. SES is a multidimensional concept that captures the individual position in the social hierarchy. And most of the literature talk about a subjective and an objective perspective. Regarding the subjective one, it is how the individual perceive in the society in terms of their financial and position well-being. In terms of the objective socioeconomic status, most of the literature analyze the educational level, the income, and the profession. So there is quite an agreement in the literature in general, and also in entrepreneurship, that subjective socioeconomic status leads to well-being. And this could be easy to understand since we believe that people that feels in a good position normally would be happier. Again, it is not a straightforward relationship, because maybe they could feel happier, but maybe they don't feel that self-realized. Maybe they don't have that autonomy. So while there is more literature on subjective socioeconomic status, there are still some space to go beyond and analyze the relationship a bit deeper. Regarding objective socioeconomic status, there is quite inconclusive evidence, and even more, the literature has found that the different dimensions of objective socioeconomic status may not be aligned. So maybe there is people with a good education, but for different reasons, their income at the time is let's go back to this sorry, I think that I've lost my connection for a couple of minutes. I hope you were able to.
Hi, Anna. We lost you for, I think, 10 seconds. So
Okay,
it was,
okay.
yeah, so we got you
Okay.
towards the end of the slide.
Okay, that's fine. Sorry about that. So again, what else do we know about the structural factors? We mentioned about the structural difference in terms of gender and the perspective of disadvantage, and how, in general, most of the literature thinks that people with higher educational level household income and prestige would feel also better. Then, would we conclude that women born into poverty are destined to face struggle as entrepreneurs, leaving them unhappy and with little chance to change? In a way, this idea is what we want to answer with this paper. And the conjectural factor that we have used to answer this question is the number of working hours, which is something really, really important for entrepreneurship. So there are many reasons why we have decided to use the number of working hours to try to solve this question. One of them is that, in a way, entrepreneurs can decide about the number of working hours. So they have autonomy and they have flexibility in determining how to organize their work. And in a way, it's quite similar to academics. So we have some commitments in terms of teaching and meetings, etc. But in terms of researching, it is us who decide how many hours to allocate on our work. So I think that makes working hours even more important and interesting for our research proposal. Okay, so based on that ideas, we have two research questions. Are entrepreneurs more or less happy depending on how many hours they work? And the second research question is, how do gender and socioeconomic status condition the relationship between the number of working hours and entrepreneurs' well-being? And how do we try to solve this question? Regarding the happiness of entrepreneurs depending on the hours that they work, there is a body of literature talking about more working hours means more levels of stress, burnout, symptoms of depression and anxiety, also likelihood of cardiovascular problems and other health issues, and difficulty in striking a work-life balance. So in general, we expect that a higher number of working hours will be negatively related to entrepreneurs' well-being. The second hypothesis views a contingent perspective on gender and objective socioeconomic status. So in principle, we focus on the dominant perspective of women as disadvantaged, and we find that highest share of household and care work demands for women. So for them, sometimes working more for the business could be more stressful. Then there is also quite an agreement that in a way, women had more obstacles and demands in terms of entrepreneurship. While this is changing a bit, they had more difficulties getting investors to finance their businesses. So they have to deal with more stress, and they could see working more hours as something more difficult than for men. Also, there is this line of research regarding misfit with gender and role expectations, which could also make women working more hours as a most stressful situation. So in general, and again, there are some recent studies that find something different from that final statement. Women derive lower general well-being from entrepreneurship than men. We have mentioned that there is a variation between the well-being among women and men entrepreneurs, and that could be also related based on their resources, their social capital, their help, their financial. We see that objective socioeconomic status could serve as a source of resource, cognitive and material. For example, having a good position, having money could help women to help with the family and to balance the work and family issues. So women entrepreneurs with lower socioeconomic status will experience the greatest decrease in their well-being. And based on what we have said up to now, male entrepreneurs with higher status will experience the less reduction in subjective well-being. And we ask again, so which disadvantage is more dominant, gender or SES, when explaining the impact of the number of working hours on the well-being of low status men and high status women? Here is where we add the role of socioeconomic status. So recent studies suggest that status has a stronger predictive power than gender, as many gender disadvantages are encompassed by the status disadvantage. That means even if you're a woman with some disadvantages, having the money to overcome those problems would help on women's well-being. Also, we have seen in many different research that returns on education benefit women entrepreneurs more than men. Then what we expect is that high status women should have more resources than low status men to cope with the negative effects on well-being caused by the heavy workload. And here we present our second hypothesis, which says that SES moderates the effect of the interaction between gender and the number of working hours in the well-being of entrepreneurs, such that both men and women with high SES will register a higher level of well-being than their counterparts with low SES as the number of working hours increase. That means even then when they are working more, based on the resource and on their characteristics, they would get happier than those with lower socioeconomic status. And this summarizes our model. So how do we test this model? I would like to mention that this is an ongoing paper. We have presented it in a couple of conferences, but the more we present it, the more things we want to do. So we have two data sets to test our hypothesis. First, we have a longitudinal sample that comes from this international project that I mentioned some minutes ago. And there we have 153 entrepreneurs that have responded 3 times. On the first wave, it was before the COVID pandemic, and we had 353 responses. We interviewed the same entrepreneurs during COVID, and we had 251 responded. And finally, a couple of months ago, we sent a questionnaire to the same entrepreneurs, and we got this 153 that makes the final longitudinal sample. The second data sets come from the European Statistics on Income and Living Conditions survey, which includes 2,445 Spanish entrepreneurs, but that sample comes from 2018. Having 2 different data sets have some advantages, but of course, it will show some limitations. So we were able to measure with the same measures some of the key variables like SES, gender, life satisfaction, and most of the control variables. But while we were writing the paper, we have decided that we will also test in the longitudinal sample aerodynamic well-being and stress, because as we have explained before, since the antecedents for each of the well-beings are different, we want to see if the model is similar for the 3 different aspects of well-being. And we also have daily data to measure the model. So the next thing that we want to do is to analyze this model with daily data to see if a small difference in the number of hours that you're working one day make a small difference in your well-being, in the well-being of the entrepreneurs on the same day. I think that I'm okay. What is the first thing that we did?
Anna, we lost you.
No. We have
Sorry, we lost you
again?
Sorry, Anna, we lost you for a second. So if you could just start the slide at the beginning. Thank you.
This one? Sorry about that.
Yeah.
I'm in my office at the university. I don't know why the connection is so bad. Sorry. So the first thing that we did before testing the model was to see if the two data sets were similar. And the answer is no. As you the European data sets, the sample is a bit older. Also, the people is less happy than in the data set that comes from the questionnaire. And there are also some other differences, except for the number of children that entrepreneurs have. It is true that there are differences, but the truth is that if we analyze the longitudinal data set, there are important differences in the well-being of people along the times that we have collected data. So in this graph, we can see how the well-being of entrepreneurs decreased drastically before and during COVID. And if we include the gender issue in the analysis, we see that the well-being decreased both for men and women, but the decrease for women was even more strong. So what we get, and I don't want to go into a lot of details on the results, we get that the number of working hours indeed impact well-being, and we also get that the socioeconomic status has an important impact on well-being. What we don't get is that gender has a direct significant impact on well-being. But I think that what we get through the interaction model from the contingent model is quite interesting. So both in the national survey and in the questionnaire, we get that people with higher socioeconomic status is happier than people with lower socioeconomic status. The interesting thing is that for those, we have similar results for women and men in both samples, but then it's interesting to see that in the sample from the questionnaire, those women with low household economic capacity, even when they are below in well-being from those with high socioeconomic status, they feel happier the most at their work. And this is quite different from what we have expected, taking into account a resource-based idea. So this is all from before COVID. What happened during COVID and in 2023? Again, richer people, men and women, are always happier. Before COVID, during COVID, and nowadays. And men and women with a similar socioeconomic status feel very similar. What we find interesting is that during COVID, the people that decreased their well-being more drastically were men with low household, while nowadays, the people who is decreasing their well-being highly with the number of working hours are women. And we are trying to find some possible explanations for all of this. And that is why we want to replicate the analysis with eudynamic well-being and with stress, and also in a database that we have with daily data. So what have we found? What are possible contributions of this ongoing research? First, to emphasize the explanatory power of social stratification factors. We have found in the different samples, in the different times, and in the different studies that people with a higher socioeconomic status is always happier. Also, using the different measures of objective socioeconomic status. We have also found that the number of working hours is negatively and significantly related with well-being. So that means that even if some entrepreneurs could feel happier to work more because it could be seen as a success for the company, at the end, they don't feel happy working more hours, sorry. And another interesting thing that I believe is important about this paper is that both gender and socioeconomic status can be the number of working hours. And finally, and I think that is also important since we have seen how the time changed the results. Situations, economic crisis can influence, and as we have seen, indeed influence how this model works on well-being. Some surprising results. Well, we have found that high status women entrepreneurs in terms of household income enjoy a similar or even higher level of well-being than high status men entrepreneurs. And this goes against the gender as a disadvantaged view. Then, can we ask, can there be happiness for women entrepreneurs? Yes, there can. And I think that there are some arguments to explain this. It's related to seeing entrepreneurship as a route for fulfillment and self-realization. Also, that sometimes entrepreneurship could be seen as something more meaningful for women than for men. And sometimes women face higher barriers to enter entrepreneurs, but once that they are there, they can feel happier than men. Of course, as I have mentioned, there are still a lot of limitations in this research. We are trying to solve them, and we are trying to find explanations for some of the results, and we are developing a lot of robustness checks to make sure that our model works in different situations. And thank you very much. And I'm open to any question.
Thank you very much, Anna. That's perfectly on time. So I imagine we'll have a few questions from the audience. Please feel free to raise your hands or to write in the chat. And I may start just with a clarifying question. I guess there are two clarifying questions. I forget, you showed us what proportion of your questionnaire sample are women. I'm imagining there's a very different amount of men and women entrepreneurs.
So the truth is that in our sample, I have the data here. 1 second. It is
Sure.
not that different. So in the sample, we have 44% of women.
Okay.
Which is not that bad. While in the other general Spanish survey, it was 37% of women.
And so the USILC data should be, as official data, that should be pretty close to what you see in other studies, or is the general trend that, let's say, approximately 40% of entrepreneurs are women. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. That's helpful. And then just the last clarifying question, and then I think Francesco has one. How did you measure socioeconomic status?
So we have different measures, but the only one that was consistent in the other survey was based on the studies of the entrepreneurs, the education, and the income of the entrepreneurs. So that's why in both surveys, we can only measure objective socioeconomic status, but in the questionnaire, we have subjective, using this general ladder where you can put yourself compared with the society, and it's quite a validated measure of socioeconomic status. And we also ask them how they perceive their socioeconomic situation.
Okay.
So,
that's helpful. Income includes all income, so it's also the returns from their business activities.
yeah, but we ask them about their house income. So of
Household.
course, yeah, it includes what they get from the company, but it's especially on how they feel at home.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Francesco, feel free.
Hi, good afternoon, and thank you very much for giving us this overview on working time and the well-being of entrepreneurs. I have a clarifying question and then one that is perhaps more substantial. The clarifying one, perhaps you mentioned it, but I lost it during the presentation. One of the measures you use is eudaimonic well-being, but I missed how you measure that. I would really be happy if you could share more details about how you observe eudaimonic well-being. And then my more substantial question is the following. It's interesting to see that there is an effect of long working hours on entrepreneurship, but is there any way to open up this black box? For instance, do we know what entrepreneurs do? How is the quality of the time they spend working? I know it may not be easy to know whether the time they spend at work is, meaningful, or but perhaps we could have some approximations. For instance, do we know whether they are entrepreneurs in big or small companies? Do they have do they work in companies that serve the public, so they are constantly facing the public, or instead they work behind closed doors? So perhaps we could try to get a better understanding of the relation between the quality of the time spent working and entrepreneurship. Thank you.
Okay, thanks to you. So regarding the measure for our aerodynamic well-being, we use the general accept risk scale that has these 6 dimensions that I explained at the beginning of the presentation. And then we also have a summarized one. And regarding your question, so the truth is that we control in the project for many different things. We control for the industry of the entrepreneurs. We control for the number of employees. We've seen, for example, that it's been quite that having or not employees is something that impacts a lot on entrepreneurs' well-being. We also control for the meaningfulness of their work, and we haven't explained it here because we haven't worked with the daily data yet. But in the daily, so when we collected the daily data, we called entrepreneurs every evening and asked them a couple of questions. One of the questions that we asked at the end was quite qualitative, asking them what they did on that day. So we have that qualitative data. The truth is that it's so difficult to add that qualitative data to our quantitative model. So we are trying to see how to use that qualitative information in the research. But yeah, I think that what you're asking us is of utmost importance and will shape much better our research.
Thank you very much.
So Anna, what I'm concerned about and this is why I talked about SES and how you defined it, because happiness is something that can contribute to entrepreneurial success, right?
Yep.
And a big proportion of happiness is personality based. It's based on characteristics, let's say inherited or based on family background. So it seems that happiness can contribute to high socioeconomic status as well as entrepreneurial success, and that it's something that we wouldn't want to include. What in the analysis. And so I would be thinking about separating people based on education, not based on education and income, because income also is, so it's a function of happiness, and also income contributes to happiness. So you've got a cyclical, empirical arrangement there. And so maybe you could look at socioeconomic status just by income, by education. Alternatively, if you have household income, would it be possible to look at the household income of the partner, if in fact there is a partner there, or maybe separate out people who are single versus partnered, to try to refine that arrangement a bit more. One of the things you said was high socioeconomic status, people are always happier. And part of that could be because of the cyclicality.
Thank you so much. The truth is that we get the same. So when we measure socioeconomic status, we separate education and income. And we get similar results with education and with income. And something that I didn't thought about, but that based on your question could be very interesting. Maybe we could use income from the previous time. So since we have longitudinal data, maybe we could use the income before COVID to measure how they feel during COVID and with the different waves. Regarding the couple, we don't have the household income from the partner, but we do ask entrepreneurs which percentage of the whole house income comes from your business. So at least we can control a little bit. But thank you very much for your suggestion, because I think that this longitudinal aspect would be important to make sure that we are not getting into that cycle that you mentioned.
Yep. Thank you very much. Cesare? We can't hear you yet. There you go.
Okay. My question more clarification about the entrepreneurship. How are they defined? USILC and other ad hoc questionnaire. And,
sorry, I cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Now, yeah. Sorry.
Okay. Sorry. My question is, who are the entrepreneurs? How you define the entrepreneurs in the USILC and in your questionnaire? They are not equal, and at which stage of their entrepreneurship journey are they? We have research showing that this change over time, depending on the phase of entrepreneurship, and yeah, that's it.
So we use entrepreneurs as self-employers or creators of small businesses that their business on a daily basis. So we have some self-employed, but we also have the founders of companies that still manage their companies on a daily basis.
Thank you, Cesare. Is that good? Do you have a follow-up or no? Okay, Daniela? Yes, go ahead.
My question is related to Cesar's question, but it is related to a few of the aspects what Kelsey was also mentioning. I'm most used to SILC data, the European data. And from that perspective, I want to tell you that in Sweden, we have a group of so-called social entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And people usually are actually the ones who no one wanted to employ. They might be successful people who, because of social problems, they become unemployed and very difficult, but they have the skills, and the municipality give them support to start companies. And they are like owners of the companies, but they that I want to say, it is something what they will never become, and it is more like they are not self-employed. they are like entrepreneur because it's something in collaboration with. But at the same time, related to Caesar question and also to Sweden, especially during 90s when the ex-Yugoslav came, it was very difficult to employ them on the market, and they were courses at the unemployment office who actually help them to start companies, and usually these companies die after 1-2 years, or after the support and the financial, especially the financial support and everything related to institutions. And that is my be careful if it is possible to take a little bit more about the institutions, and also if you could control in a way or other about this, if their national programs of helping special people with like these immigrants which have skills but no one employ them to start their own business, then and also nonetheless like Kelsey's suggested education and income, I would like to suggest to you also what kind of profile have the companies, because there this entrepreneurship in pizzeria or whatever, and that I'm trying to say is nothing bad on that, but still it is a difference between self-employed and entrepreneur, and it might be possible to this separation to to give us a little bit more clear picture about the well-being of real entrepreneurs. That are my few things. Thank you very much. I hope that you got some of them. Sorry if I was not clear.
No, thank you so much. It was that on the last couple of seconds I lost you, but I think that your suggestions are really, really interesting and that could help us a lot. So of course we don't have all of the information that you're mentioning because it is not possible, but we do have some things that.
I think that we lose you. I hope that that is the case, not that you lost me.
Opportunity driven.
Anna, I think that we lost you.
Hi.
We didn't.
Sorry. So I was saying that in wave one.
Okay.
I'm hearing myself twice. Sorry. So in wave one, we asked the entrepreneur if they were entrepreneurs because of necessity or because opportunity driven. So in a way, we could get some information about that. And then we also asked them about volunteering and some social aspects. But of course, I mean, we could analyze national programs at the time where we collected data to see if any of these things were possible.
Yes, that is my suggestion. If
Yeah.
it is possible from national statistics, especially from European Union, I think that there are some aggregation of this kind of information. And I think that it might be possible for you to get a little bit more.
Yeah.
Good luck. Thank you for the presentation.
Thanks to you. Thank you.
So real quick, unfortunately, Francisco and I have to jump off in a couple of minutes, but I can let the chat continue as people like to have questions. Cesare will ultimately close. And with that, Judith, you can ask your question.
Oh, hi, everyone. It was actually quite related to what was just said before that. I just wanted to add that we were also looking at some active labor market policies in Hungary, and it was pretty prevalent among female to have this necessity-driven, very small, like self-employed type entrepreneurship, you know, that they open up their own hairdresser small business, or they become nail designers and whatever, and often is driven by simply tax laws or some institutional things. So I think if you have the data on necessity driven and opportunity driven, that would be really cool to separate those two groups, because maybe you would find some interesting stuff, because it's probably very diverse, very different groups, you know, and maybe the way entrepreneurship is linked to their well-being is also different. I mean, you figure it out from your data, but if you have longitudinal one, then at least you have different points in time.
Thank you very much. For sure, we are going to add the control of the necessity opportunity in the model, because I think that it will really show differences and importance, and also in a way could be quite related to socioeconomic status. So
Right.
yeah, thank you very much.
Especially for female,
Yeah.
it's a big deal.
But let's see if also applies for men in from low socioeconomic status or things like that. And regarding Francesco's question in the chat, we tried the nonlinear relationship and we didn't find anything. But it is true that for sometimes we expected that relation to be like that, but it wasn't.
Thank you. And as Kelsey said, I'm sorry that we will have to jump out of this meeting very quickly, but thanks a lot for joining us and for sharing your work with us. That
Thank
was
you very
very
much for
insightful.
inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. I will also jump off, but there is a question from Francesco if you want to address, and I'll be able to see it in the recording, but I leave that to you and Cesare. Thank you again.
Yeah. There are other questions on the chat from Francesco.
Yes, there was the U in the reverse U. Would I have
answered already?
and then if we wanted to raise the well-being of entrepreneurs, especially for women entrepreneurs, I mean, I would say from education. So, and that is one of the, when we talk about the practical recommendations of the research, we say that education is like the key to enhance women entrepreneurs' well-being.
And there's another question on the top. The entrepreneurs observed from USILC, are they self-employed? The question probably from Chiara.
I think that I've already answered that question. Yeah. So we have some self-employed and other small business. So
can I just quickly ask why was the mechanism different? Because you said that it's previously, before COVID, it was more men who were reducing their well-being with increased work hours, and then now it's more women, or did I get it wrong? So what was the shift?
Sorry. So first, what I showed is that the well-being of women has decreased much more than the well-being of men. Secondly, we found that both women or men have higher well-being always when they are from the high socioeconomic status class. And finally, we've seen a shift and we are trying to find an answer to that change, because we saw that during COVID, those men that were working long hours from the low socioeconomic status, they decreased their well-being, while this is happening for women nowadays. So we want to try to find a response for that change in the behavior of. But I at the moment I don't have an explanation. That's the truth.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I will think about that, and maybe I'll write an email to you, because you were trying to do something for Central Europeans, and maybe we could like
That
think
would be
about
great.
comparison with the Spanish ones.
That would be great if you have an idea, because we are thinking about that and trying to find an explanation for that change in the shapes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are there other questions from the audience for Anna? If not, we try to close this on time. And I thank you very much, Anna, for your presentation, for sharing your ongoing work. It's definitely of major interest. Hope that you had some insights as well from the community. It was quite lively. And voilà, thank you. Hope to have you on the next SES calls and be around. Oh,
Thank you.
There's a question probably from my colleague. No, it's a clapping.
Thank you very much for the invitation. And I really hope to share more knowledge with you in the future. So looking forward to hear your research too.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.